We had silver didn't get above $20 for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then in the span of 3 weeks, it goes from 18, 19 up to 28, now 29. And I don't think that it's an accident. I mean, we talk a lot about the paper leverage, and sometimes people do or don't want to hear it. But to me, this isn't the normal distribution of a stock. Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And it's another day in the silver rally. So I know we have some smiles out there tonight because I'm joined again by Jorge Ramiro Monroy of Reyna Silver. And we're recording on an early Monday. And I don't even know if he has seen this yet because we've been talking for a while, but you have another wild spike, wow, which is becoming almost a daily occurrence here.
Amazing. So what's that, almost 29.50 almost?
Yeah, got up to almost 29.50 as you point out. It looks like the close was 28.32, so came back in a little bit, still up about 63 cents on the Kitco chart. And Jorge, I'm glad you're here to talk about these developments, as I know a lot of folks out there. All last week, all we heard was silver's up. How come the mining stocks aren't going anywhere? I think it'll likely just primarily balance itself out in time, but certainly you can see a lot of green. There's Dolly Varden up 14%. There's Reyna Silver, Jorge's company, up 15% now on the day. So the question I would like to ask you is that we had silver didn't get above $20 for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then in the span of 3 weeks, it goes from 18, 19 up to 28, now 29. And I don't think that it's an accident. I mean, we talk a lot about the paper leverage, and sometimes people do or don't want to hear it. But to me, this isn't the normal distribution of a stock. So curious, any thoughts on that, and or any other funny things you're doing as we watch silver skyrocket lately?
No, absolutely. Well, listen, I think there is a number of things that contribute for these rallying prices. To be honest, a lot of us who've been watching the silver market for many years, we all saw this coming, but we're also very anxiously waiting to see if it would actually happen. And then finally, over the last 2 weeks, it's starting to really take off. And I think for your listeners, I would really invite you to listen to some of the, like for instance, Eric Sprott had a great podcast last Friday where he gives his thoughts on what's happening with the silver market. Speaking a lot about the COMEX and the commercial banks, and I think it's really worth for anybody who's interested in the subject to go and look at the last few episodes of that podcast, because it's gives some great explanations. I think a lot of, also the gold silver ratio, the tendency for it to go back to more the historic average, which we, by the way, are still quite far from. We're still, I think, now at something like 80 to 1. And I think a lot of your listeners might already be aware that, silver is present on Earth at a ratio of 15 to 1 to gold. So, somewhere between that and the current ratio, there's still a lot of upside for silver. But maybe a couple of perspectives that I can offer that are maybe not discussed as widely, and I think that are also very interesting to look at is, over the last 10 years, I've been doing a lot of site visits to mining projects in silver in Mexico. I would say, it was for the last 10 years, I've gone to maybe 6-7 site visits in Mexico looking for silver assets. And one thing that really strikes you is, obviously silver the biggest side of production for silver comes as a byproduct either of gold, copper, or zinc. I think that's makes something like 65 to 70% of the production. But then from the primary silver producers, there's a number of mid-tiers and a couple of majors that produce silver as a primary metal. And by the way, increasingly those, because of the last few years were so tough, increasingly those started producing more gold. So very few pure silver places, and maybe not everybody's aware of that. But one thing that really strikes you is for the last, let's say, 7-8 years, the majority of the primary silver producers have been producing at either break even or at a slight loss.
Yep.
In the meantime, the certain usages for silver have increased, substantially. And I think one thing that we were all starting to wonder as gold took off in March was, is that ratio for silver and gold broken? Because, it started going up and silver wasn't moving. So a lot of people were saying, well, silver is now behaving more like an industrial metal. But I feel like over the last few weeks, a lot of things have just moved in favor of silver. I think the inflows that you're seeing into the ETFs are massive. I think the SLV, which is the biggest silver ETF, is bringing in the equivalent of daily world production. And for those of listeners who might not know this, silver, 70% of silver actually gets consumed every year for industrial purposes. For obviously silverware, components for electronics, components for cars, and then solar panels has been one of the sectors in silver that has been increasing more and more. Now, there's a tremendous amount of demand for bullion and coins. I think you've all heard and perhaps experienced it yourself. If you go to the Kitco store or any store to buy bullion, you either have to pay a big premium, and that's even if you can actually have any product. A lot of the companies will sell it to you, but they say they can only give it to you in 3 to 4 months. So there's a lot of elements that you now want to take a closer look and see what's happening. But going back to my original point, for me intuitively, I've been feeling for many years now, looking at the condition for the mid-tier silver producers, seeing how difficult it's been for them to maintain their productions, let alone exploration. So there has been very little exploration for many, many years now in silver. If you look at other than, Silver Crest, which has a major silver discovery, there aren't too many other high-grade new silver deposits in the last, let's say, 5 years. Very, very few. So I think that's another important thing to keep an eye on. I keep thinking, as the silver price keeps increasing and then demand for physical bullion keeps going, I feel like the opportunity for having an event where, similar to what happened with platinum a couple of years ago, where there was some rumors that you couldn't get enough supply, that if that happens to silver, silver is gonna take off. And I think we're moving into a point in time where that's, I think, in the cards. And then, if gold takes a run, as a lot of the banks are now, all of a sudden you're starting to listen to the mainstream media speak about gold. I think for many years, you wouldn't find any even a discussion of it at all. So we're moving into a very interesting time for all those of us who are in the silver business. It's a very interesting time, and I think definitely a good time to look into silver.
Well, I mean, you know where I stand on that one. And I mean, but a lot of great points you raised there. First of which is that if you factor in the psychology and the way, there's the way maybe the book says you should invest, the buy low, sell high. And then there's the way people act where we chase what's hot. And well, not all of us, hopefully I'm not maybe sometimes I do that. But so you had, for the last decade, people didn't want to sit with their money in silver or gold while it was getting pounded and it wasn't moving. But actually, I take that back. That's not true, because as you will see here, Jorge, you mentioned the silver ETFs. I mean, like SLV. This is fascinating to me
Yep.
because here, this is the past 10 years. And if you can see the gray line here, that's the price. So even when silver was getting pounded down from $50, you see people were just adding more metal in here until really now it's going exponential. So the
Yep.
idea that the price is rising, well, you have that happening. You have a run on the COMEX, and which another thing that you touched on a little bit that I found rather shocking is that right now, in terms of what's available in investment grade form, now obviously I have like a lot of the silver in my basement here.
Yeah. Is
I'm gonna
that
get
really your
my
silver?
last. Yeah, I'm gonna get Hunt added to my last name. I know you're Jorge Ramiro Monroy, and you were telling me how in Mexico they have two last names. Maybe I'll add Hunt so I can
Yeah.
show off my silver bars here. But what's interesting in terms of investment grades bars, there is less silver than gold above ground,
Correct.
and which makes what you brought up about the gold to silver ratio quite intriguing here. I was stunned when I saw this chart a couple months ago. This is from a Peter Schiff
Yep.
silver report, which you can download from their site. I mean, like you talked about, we've seen the gold to silver ratio got up to 125, maybe it was 129 back in March. But when I saw that, really, until like a little bit before the Fed came along, and obviously there's some government intervention, but you see how it was just flat for 200 years, and then things go wild as the Wall Street era of modern finance kicks up. But when some people ask, the gold to silver ratio, do you trade it? Or, I mean, it's something I think people can look at, some of these longer term things, they're going to go when they go. Yet what I think could push it is the amount of money of, it's not, people aren't buying, just a small amount of silver. It's going in at 5 or 6 to 1. And when it's priced at 80 to 1, that's what can converge something like that.
Correct. No, absolutely. And I think you're also moving into when you watch everything that's happening in the world with the amount of money printing, currency debasement, that I think and I go through this myself, because I was looking at the market on Friday, and I was thinking, should I buy more silver? Because I actually did, when silver went down in March to like 1250, I did actually go in big with a big chunk of my net worth. And of course that trade has, paid out. So wondering whether at these prices, do I still keep buying? And, part of my conclusion is I think you're moving into a part of, with all the turbulence and volatility, that, silver is, it really started thinking about storage of value, store of value, because if things get difficult, I think gold and silver are just going to play. Forget about the upside, which is significant, but also just as a store of value, it'll be quite important. So I've been cautiously adding to my position and watching the market every day. And to be honest with you, every day my confidence is growing as I see, I think especially as you see the incredible momentum of gold, it's really amazing. It used to be for the last few years that every time there was a slightly positive news, the jobs number is slightly above forecast, it would knock gold right down. And I think over the last 3 months, more and more people are realizing that you need to be in gold just to protect your wealth. And so I think the potential for that ratio to contract between gold and silver is very interesting. And and I think you should be in both gold and silver. I think silver offers a very unique opportunity to the upside, while also maintaining that function of storing your value. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it for somebody who might be just and I've had this situation where a lot of my friends are calling me and asking me, silver's going up, should I go in? And to be honest, I struggle because in the past, I think intuitively, the last thing you want to do is get into a market that's gone from 1250 to close to 30 in 3 months. But then, when you look at the arguments for why you should be buying silver, and when you look at, again, the ratio to gold, there is a lot of upside, and it might be a situation where you really, come to the conclusion that you should be buying gold and silver just to protect your wealth.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying because, all right, if paying 28 or 29 is perhaps not as good as paying 18, or if you bought at 12. So it changes things a little bit, and I think that's fair to factor in, although I guess what had me feeling so comfortable about gold and silver very early on from when I got in was that, to me, I don't think it's possible for the Fed to raise interest rates. And here silver is surging. What are the headlines? Mnuchin open to restarting relief talks. We're prepared to put more. I think they could be a little more genuine, say more printed money on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like it's not going to stop. And what am I going to do? Go out and buy Tesla shares? So I don't know.
No, and you know that between now and election time, they're going to print as much money as it takes, because they whatever they can do to. I think Trump wants to have those checks with his signature, right? I think they're coming to people with a letter signed by him, and I don't think they care. And then if they lose, they'll just make it looks like Biden is going to win, but God, like, he is going to inherit such a mess. The amount of money printing just over the last few weeks and last few months since COVID started it's unreal. And I'll tell you another thing that I've been looking at a lot, because of course all the numbers in the US make a lot of headlines with the jobs numbers, and the entire world, we're all watching the US economy as the barometer for the world economy. I'm obviously from Mexico. I have calls with a lot of my friends there, a lot of calls with people in different parts of South America, calls with different people in different parts of Southeast Asia. And some of the stories you're starting to hear are just unreal. Like what's happening to these economies, there's obviously the anecdotal evidence, but also you look at the numbers. There's a lot of countries that are going to be contracting 30, 40%. I don't think we've ever faced that in the history of humanity. And, in the US and in Europe and Japan, the government, even here in Hong Kong, the government has the ability and the budget to give people money to stay afloat for a few months or maybe even years. But in the rest of the world, that's not the case. Look at India. People there are 40% of the population are day laborers. They have to go and earn their money every single day. Otherwise, there's no food on the table. So, my worry is that the longer this crisis keeps going, I think that the damage to some third world country and developed countries in development, the harm can be maybe irreparable, and if not irreparable, it could take years to get back to where they were. A lot of these countries had very, very fragile economies as it was. I've been looking at Argentina. I was looking at some silver projects there, and just doing a little bit of reading of what's happening there. It's also really scary. They basically very close to being bankrupt. Which that has happened to them over and over. But it's again, for all those reasons, when I it's very tough as an investor. You turn Bloomberg and you start listening, and you always sort of, being in this industry, you always feel like you must be crazy because you see things one way, and the mainstream media is painting everything in a very positive way, and it's still very much like that. You hear, I think that I was listening to the jobs number from, I forget if it was yesterday or 2 days ago, and it was, I think it was a couple 100,000 jobs more than expected, but you still lost 20 million jobs. I mean, and then the market going up the way that it has on the back of so many people losing jobs. It's a bit crazy.
Yeah, it sure is. And actually, I heard a rumor floating around today that prior to the election, there's a chance that they actually might get Ben Bernanke his helicopter and send him out with the checks and the bills. And
I haven't seen this.
I mean, it's incredible. I'm working on getting figurines minted of that. So Jorge, we'll have to get you a chopper Ben.
Yeah, you'll have to get me one.
Yeah, and real quick, before we wrap up, I wanted to mention that you are part of Reyna Silver. Unfortunately, you stuck around when we recorded a profile interview, which will be coming people's way in a moment, so they can find out more, especially a lot of people looking for leverage on the stocks. But just for anyone who is not familiar yet, could you give a couple quick bullets, just
absolutely,
what the project is and what people might want to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So Reyna Silver is an exploration company. We have 4 exploration assets in Mexico, and the theme of the company is high-grade silver that has the potential for being district scale and large silver deposits. We have Peter Magaw as our chief technical advisor, and Peter is one of the most successful silver exploration geologists in the last couple of decades. He is one of the founders of Max Silver, which is about to put into production one of the highest grade silver assets in the world. So we're a company that is, if you're looking at investing in silver, I think it's not a bad idea to have a company like ours in your portfolio to have extra leverage to the silver price. We trade in the Toronto Stock Exchange under the ticker RSLV, and in the process of getting a listing in the US as well, hopefully in a month or so.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And folks, you can find out more about that because, as I mentioned, Jorge was kind enough to talk silver for quite a bit. Thank you for joining me for this interview. And folks, if you'd like to find out more about Reyna Silver, that interview is coming your way now.